welcome you all in the name of GÉANT, the GÉANT Security Awareness Task Force. As I said before, my name is Rosanne Pouw. I work for Switch, the Swiss NREN in Switzerland. And GÉANT is, of course, the collaboration of European national research and education networks of Europe. In our task force, we try to provide cybersecurity awareness insights and supporting you with practical stuff like campaigns, materials, but also with knowledge and webinars such as this one. This year, I don't know who's come across, I hope many of you have come across our cybersecurity campaign, which is called Be Mindful, Stay Safe. You will find the link to the current campaign in the chat. And I think I have to admit people and talk at the same time. Double multitasking is not my strong suit. Hello, everyone who's just coming in. We've already started with the introductions. And this is where I would very much like to thank Rosanne Pouw, who is my colleague. I can really call her colleague because she's from SURF, the Dutch NREN, who will be talking about a new program or a new approach, let's call, which is based on the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. Where she's trying to help institutions to approach awareness in a more structured way, because very often we see that we have isolated initiatives that are just kind of, you do a security awareness month campaign and then you do nothing for the rest of the year. And Rosanne will basically introduce this practical model that's been developed together with researchers from Dutch universities on how to embed cybersecurity awareness more effectively into your organization's culture. And whilst I'm still admitting people, I also want to introduce Rosanne herself, who's really, I would say, an expert in the field. She's got a very interesting background. I'll just mention the social psychology here, but she's also got over a decade of experience, and that is hands-on experience as a security and privacy officer. And so I think she's in a very good place to understand the research side of this interdisciplinary field, but also the practicalities of what it's like working at an institution. And I think with that, Rosanne, the floor is yours. It's now 6 minutes past 3, and I think we can definitely start with the real content. Thank you, Rosanne, if you want to share your slides.
Thank you so much, Cornelia, and thank you everyone for joining today, because the subject is kind of like is interesting from different points of view, but might also feel like a bit of a approach sounds kind of vague. So I'm going to share my screen and share and make it big. Continue to share this PowerPoint window, continue to share. So just a quick check from Cornelia, can you?
Perfect.
Yes?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Okay, so today I'm going to tell you a bit about a structured approach to human-related cybersecurity and how to get from awareness to behavior change. And before I get into the details, let's start with a quick introduction. I'm the product manager, awareness and training at SURF in the Netherlands, and I help research and education institutes with increasing security awareness. And I have toolkits, we do surveys, like we organize trainings, that kind of thing. And this is something that is very dear to my heart. And we've been doing so since 2009, so we have a bit of a history in there. And before I dive into the details, I want to touch lightly upon why awareness is getting more important for our universities. So this is a slide from Lance Spitzner from SANS, and he uses this also in his training. And I found it quite striking that if you look at the CISO team, you have a lot of roles. Traditionally, security has a lot of technical roles. So you can see that's much to the right. You have like incident response, many types of roles, data protection since 2018, and a bit like strategic things. And usually awareness is one of the many things that a security team does. So you have like the overall cybersecurity, and one of the things is security awareness. And if you're lucky, you have one whole person to do this job. And for most of our universities, it means that someone is doing this as one of the many things they are already doing. And the interesting thing is that if you look at cybersecurity and the amount of data breaches, and I got this from the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Reports 2024, is that when you look at the way cybercriminals found an entry into an organization, and the incidents, if you analyze the incidents that happened worldwide, in a large percentage of those incidents, people are involved. And you might even say that this number hasn't gone down in the past year. So they have been monitoring this for quite some time. And this number stays around the 70-ish percent, which means that if we're working on cybersecurity, we really need to look at the human factor. And to compare the increase of security controls from a technical point of view, if you look at the Windows operating system, when you bought a computer in 2000 and, well, before 2000 actually, if you bought a computer, then it wouldn't have anything like security controls on it yet. It wouldn't have a virus scanner. It wouldn't have a firewall. You would all have to do that yourself. And in the past 25 years, the suppliers have increased the technical security controls on their products. If you buy a computer today, you will probably have a lot of the controls that you need to keep yourself safe. Same things goes for your smartphone or for other products. Security, the technical part of security is getting more attention and more fixes. Well, at the same time, humans operate with an operating system that is built in the Stone Age. And this means that we tend to behave in the way that our brain is built. And it's very hard to change the way people behave because most of the time you're behaving on the basic functions of your brain. So we have a lot of technical controls to prevent cybercriminals to take the technical route. And what is happening? Cybercriminals are taking the human route. They're targeting humans more and more often. And that is one of the reasons it's very important to address awareness in your organization and why it's important for our universities to get better at how do we help our employees, how do we help our students become more cyber resilient. And the question they have is, how do you update the human system? And traditionally, looking at awareness, updating the human system was very much about informing and training people. And a thing we notice with in the recent years is that many of the universities have a bit of a compliance approach when it comes to awareness. And this has also is related to the GDPR, for example, which is compliance based, but also the NIS2 legislation is one of the recent laws introduced in Europe that will probably also encourage like compliance-like behavior. So for many universities, awareness comes from a place of we have to prove that we're doing everything to help our employees and students to make them more aware. And the compliance point of view is very often driven by measuring things and often include like phishing simulations or mandatory training or e-learning platforms, the type of awareness activities that make it easier to measure and prove that you have actually done awareness. The problem with the compliance approach is that if you look at the research on things like phishing simulations and mandatory training, is that from a behavioral perspective, it doesn't work in the sense that if people are taking a mandatory training, they're not very open to learning new things, and they're not very motivated to change their behavior because it was mandatory. And phishing simulations can actually damage the relationship that you have with the people you're trying to reach, because they can feel like they have to spend time on something that they don't think important, or they don't understand why they're getting this type of simulations, or they feel like you're wasting their time. And once you get to that point and they see security as the annoying people who want you to follow mandatory trainings, then it's very hard to change their behavior or to convince them to behave in a different way. So the problem our universities face is we want to go from a compliance perspective to a behavior change perspective. We want to be more effective when it comes to awareness and training to make to influence the behavior and make our universities more safe, which is very good. And it also is a thing about you catch two birds with one stone, because if you focus on behavior change, you can still create metrics. You can still measure what you're doing and provide the proof that you need from a compliance point of view. Okay. And when we talked to our universities, they also mentioned other problems that they had in their university. And I wanted to know, does this sound familiar to you? If it does, you can let me know in the chat. So some of them say the amount of information about cybersecurity behavior is overwhelming. It's overwhelming for the end user because they have to learn new things and know more things very often. But it's also overwhelming from the security person's perspective, because new things are happening all the time, technologies change, and how are you going to convey that into awareness and training? Another problem is that sometimes the board is convinced that phishing simulation is going to fix everything because they heard it somewhere from a vendor or from someone else. And it's very hard to convince them to take a different approach, a more like positive behavior change approach. It's also very hard to convince internal stakeholders like HR or communication or the different faculties to spend time and energy on awareness or training, because it's one of the many priorities that people have when they work for your institution, and it's usually not on the top of their list. So there is a bit of like how can we reach how can we explain the importance of what we're doing and what we want them to do. And one of the most often asked questions from university is, where do I start? How do I get a grip on these type of problems? And how can I make sense of how can I get to a structured approach of awareness to actually build the trust in my organization and build on knowledge and skills? So that's the assignment that we took with us. And with so many choices and new insights, how can you make managing human-related cybersecurity like bite-sized or easy to digest? And you might notice I chosen a lot of pictures of cookies because that's the analogy I'm using for today, the metaphor. Awareness professionals are very often overwhelmed. There's a lot of things they have to do. And how can you make it more structured and more get a better overview and a better grip? And that's why we got together with a working group with people from the universities. And we started with an idea, which is how can we create a structure or like an approach, a plan, do, check, act type of approach for awareness. And before we started, we had to look at the ingredients. And if you have ever baked cookies, good question. If you have baked cookies, you know it's very easy to bake a cookie if you have a recipe. So if you have a recipe and then you have everything laid out, you follow the recipe, and then you usually get a decent cookie, even if you have never made a cookie before. But if you don't have a recipe, it's very complicated. You don't know where to start or what to use. So we're comparing this process approach for awareness to a recipe for a cookie. You want to bake something, you want to raise awareness in your institution, and you need to know what the ingredients are that you're going to work with. So we looked into existing models, and these are some of the existing models that we looked and incorporated because we found them useful for the professionals. Things like the security awareness maturity model from SANS, but also the COM-B model from Mitchie. And we had the traditional people process technology model that we also incorporate. And we thought all these models are very useful, but at a different moment and at a different place in the process that you're working through. So how about we order them in a logical order? Okay, so the ingredients were here. And we would also like to say, once you get used to the structured approach, you can switch out ingredients. So if you like a different behavior model or a different maturity model, or you can switch it out and use the model that you prefer in that place of the process. Okay, so we have looked at ingredients. Then in order to actually bake cookies or in order to measure behavior change, you need to incorporate like metrics. And we're often talking about KPIs, but as behavior change is a subject of like a social science type of subject, it makes sense that if you measure different things, sometimes the measure will be an evaluation, will be a survey, can be an interview. And sometimes your measurements can be very much like numbers from how many people did the e-learning, or how many people use a password manager, or how many people actively use a VPN. Those are different types of measurements that you can use in the process. And what we decided is that measuring change is important during the whole process. And as an institution, you need to decide by yourself, what are the most important things that I want to measure and how do I want to measure them? So we do mention them every step of the process, and it's an integral part of the model that we're using. And with the ingredients and with the different type of measurement, we started brewing on a recipe. And one of the things that the participants said is, if I go into my organization, I need to speak their language. I can't convince other people if if I use a very technical point of view or a very different approach or structure, then they won't know how to fit it into their work process. So they proposed to use the PDCA cycle, the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, because for many universities, this is a cycle that is used internally, especially with supporting roles. And there is usually a PDCA cycle in place already, which means that if you take an awareness approach and you can compare it to what you're already doing inside your institution and show them what you're going to add in value to the cycle, it can be very beneficial. So, okay, we have the Plan, Do, Check, Act, and then we have the different ingredients, and that's how we came up with the process on the right. If you look closely, yeah, we had to choose different colors because when we started with the yellow, red, blue, green, that was very similar to Microsoft colors and Google colors. So we had to choose slightly different colors, but we placed risk management and behavior on the upper left corner, which is most of the planning phase. Then next to it comes a phase where you create a program plan. And in the program plan is included how to convince the board, how to convince your stakeholders, how to reach out to all the different faculties and tell them exactly what you need, when you need it, why you need it. And once you have that set in place, it will help you take the next step, which is inform and train, which is the traditionally the core of what we do with awareness. Informing people, training people, and we also added a bit about using platforms, because that is something that the universities are very much working on or with at this moment. And then in the last step, you're going to evaluate and report. What did you do? What were the risks? What did you try to change? Was it effective? And then you go back to the top and go into the next cycle. And I put it on different slides so you can see it in a bit bigger. The useful thing about this process type of approach is that it's working for smaller type campaigns, for like campaigns that you can do in 1 to 3 months, but you can also use it for larger campaigns, for example, for preparing your annual schedule for cybersecurity, or even for creating a multi-year campaign or a multi-year approach to what you want to achieve in your institution. And now that I told you about all the puzzle pieces, I'm also going to show you the thing that we also made, because our university said, okay, now I have a process which is continuous, but when I'm going to talk to the board, or when I'm going to talk to my institutions, they want to know, where do we start and how do we proceed? So we made a linear view. And in the linear view, you can also see some of the subjects that are below those steps. And we created the materials in English and in Dutch, which means that I created the download package in English that you can download at the end of this presentation, and that you can use in your own institution if you want. Okay, here we go. This is all very nice and very theoretical. So we have the puzzle pieces, we know how to bake, we have a recipe, but now is the question, can you actually bake cookies with this thing? Can you actually use the model in an institution, and what happens? So we did proof of concepts. And I'm just going to talk about 2 proof of concepts today, but we have one more that I'm not including because it's still halfway through the process. And the first process in practice is Erasmus University from Rotterdam. And Erasmus University has a very fortunate position that they have an awareness officer. And they have different faculties who also have decentralized awareness officers, like the data manager, who's also very interested in including awareness in training, etc. And what they struggled with is that they wanted to do, I get a lot of pings, but I can't see the chat. So I don't know if people are asking me questions.
Sorry, did you? No, it's all
No?
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then there's just something else that's going ping, ping, ping in the background. Good. So the problem that Erasmus University was facing is that they have the centralized awareness officer, they have all the faculties, and they needed to speak the same language. They needed to get on the same page, because they agreed they wanted to bake the perfect cake. In the end, they were all very much supportive of the idea. We want to raise awareness, and we want to do this from the behavior type of perspective, and we want to do this together. But they didn't know where to start, and also they didn't know yet how to work together, because everybody had a different background or different faculties. Some worked with a lot of personal information, and others had like a different focal point. And what they did is they used a structured approach to get everybody on the same page. So she created uh, the program from the process model, and then used it to show them, these are the things that we do together, and these are the things where you have the opportunity to make it special for your faculty. So for example, looking at risk management, the risks involved for your university, she made the risk matrix for the university itself, and the faculty members said, okay, these risks are very important for us and these are not. So they knew the awareness program had to be adapted for the different faculties on those points. And the same goes with the program. Some have more time, some have less time. And then onward to informing and training. So some people preferred in-person training or like in teams, and others preferred e-learning. So they used the model to speak the same language and to create the most effective type of awareness for the different faculties. And she said, at this point, we are baking a cake. We're just happy that we can bake a basic cake, that we can have this conversation together, that we can work together and speak the same language. But the strength of the model is that this is the first year that they're using it. If you use this year after year, they will probably get better at using it and making it easier to get toward their goal of the behavior change that they're after. This is one of the bigger things, and we're still in progress with them. We're monitoring and helping them whenever possible. And to make it more concrete, earlier this year, we got a warning from our community, our security community, that info stealers were the use of info stealers was increasing, and the amount of incidents or reports about info stealers were also increasing for the educational sector. So our institutions asked us, okay, what can we do from an awareness point of view on info stealers? And the first thing that our community said is, we need a flyer. We need a flyer, we need an image, we need a video. And the good news is we also already have a toolkit with like images and videos, etc. But when we dug a bit deeper, we asked, now, what do you need to implement this in your institution? They said, well, okay, we need actually the whole cycle. We need to know what the risk is. We need to know what behavior we want to change and from what target audience. We need to know how to convince the board that this is also important, as it's just something that's popping up right now. And then we need to train in a form, and we want to know that it was actually effective. So we used the cycle for this very short-term campaign that we created. It took us about 3 weeks to prepare and about 3 months to run, which means that we created the materials and the universities could take it and then use it in their institution. So looking from the risk, we provided them with reports like the Verizon data breach investigation report, but also from our own SurfCert, who showed that there was an increase in activity, and from some examples from recent universities who had dealt with info stealers. And then we went into the question, okay, what behavior do we want to change? And what is our target audience? Who do we need to reach? From a very effective, from that standpoint, we deducted that everyone, students and staff, should be aware, should know something about if there's something happening, or if I'm not sure what's going on, I need to report. And the other target audience was the service desk, because if an info stealer is installed on a laptop, you need a very specific set of instructions in a specific order to completely remove it. If you do not follow the order, there's a chance that the info stealer persists, that it remains. Okay, so we made it very basically an advice and a handbook for the service desk, and then we created the materials and the university used it. And the strength of this method is that we made it very clear by using the steps in the model why we providing them with this pieces of information, how they could use it, and at which step they were. And we also went into how to evaluate the report, how to measure this. How can you measure info stealers from a technical point of view? How can you look at the behavior of your employees right now? For example, with how many incidents were reported. And after the campaign ran, how can you measure it again to see if something changed? And this was the first time that we used this approach, and it was very positively received from our community. They liked that it was a complete approach from start to finish. So we're going to continue taking this route. Okay, so we created a model. We created a recipe. We are trying to make things with it. We're using it in several institutions and to see if it works. But the thing about a model is that about a recipe is that it needs to be used. The more value, if the more often you use, the more valuable it gets, because then you can increase it, improve it, change it, and make it the best fit that you properly can. So one of the things that we're doing right now is developing a training for the awareness process, where we take this process with a lot of examples, but exercises and materials from the institutions and supporting materials, templates, to train people to use to use the model. And another thing is that we do is that we still have the proof of concepts in the universities that we're going to continue and keep an eye on, evaluate and improve the model where needed. And the third thing is that we have a list of additional templates and tools that we think would be very beneficial that we want to develop in the next year or so. And then we're going to check how often it's used and does it need to be extended? Do we need more, or is this sufficient? So the idea of this approach is that it's a very complete approach that universities can use, whether they're big or small, whether they just started with awareness and training or they are already very much accustomed to running campaigns, and to support this on the long term. And that is basically it for now. And I told you at the beginning that I created all these materials in Dutch and in English. So I added a download package. You can find it at this EduNL link. And EduNL is a way of making secure short links. And if you download the package, you get the presentation, you get the example of the info stealers and the English visuals that you could use if you want to. And this concludes my presentation, and I'm very curious if there are people who have questions for me.
Thank you so much, Rosanne. That was really interesting. And I learned some new things, although it's not the first time I see this. So far, we don't have any questions in the chat, but maybe if people have questions, I think we're not that many. So if you just want to raise your hand and then just shoot out your question, or if you prefer, you can also put it in the chat. And if no one else has a question, I have a few, but I want to give the opportunity to people first. I see Mark.
So hi Rosanne, thanks for your presentation and the ideas on how to tackle this challenging topic, I would say. So thank you a lot. My question would be a little bit perhaps from your experience with, for example, Erasmus University. How many resources do I need at a university to, let's say, start this kind of approach and to establish it on the long term?
And we're diving into this in the training for the process, as awareness is actually a multidisciplinary approach. The tendency for people is to do everything themselves. And if you do everything yourself, you need a big team. You need like a CISO team, and you need someone for communications, and you need someone for awareness and behavior change, etc. And what we noticed is that there's there are usually already people working in a university specialized in communications. There are usually people working who are already specialized in behavior change. But you need to find them, you need to convince them, and you need to get them on board. So what I would say if you have a very small institution and just one person is enough, I think you still need one person who wants to actually pull the weight of the program. And depending on the sort of university that you are, you need at least to be able to consult with the technical security and like the GDPR people, the privacy people. And the idea of this model is that you know enough of the different disciplines to run the program and convince people that they need to do it. And you know enough to find people that you can hire to help you, or the people that can help you internally, but you don't need to build a complete team before you get started. So I hope this makes sense, because I wish I could say you need 2.5 people with these skills.
No, it makes sense. Thanks you. But let's. It's still challenging, probably depending on the institution, on the resources that are available, because, of course, there are people in my university who are doing things like you said, but people are typically quite full of work. So when you come with something new and so on, it's always challenging, but that's not only at our university, I would assume. So that's a general issue here. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Fabio in the chat. Do you see the chat, Rosanne, or do you want me to read it out to
Open
you?
it.
I'll
As
read
an
it out to you.
NREM,
Yeah.
how do you support universities? Do you just hand out the material or do you offer continuous support? Yeah, okay. I am the awareness and training product manager, which means that my full-time job is supporting universities. Yay! So yes, we do offer continuous support, and we're looking at the best way we can do this. So what we have in place right now is we have a toolkit with awareness materials so that they can use in the inform and training stage. We have created e-learnings that they can use. So we have material for that stuff, but we also created a risk management kit. And so for the different steps, for the behavior change, I hired a specialist to do a training for our community. So for the different steps, we are supporting them wherever there's the most need. And sometimes this means a question about, can you develop like the info stealers material? But sometimes the question is, we need to know more about behavior change because we're not very familiar with it. And then I find the best way to support them. Sometimes it's developing material, templates, policies, that kind of thing. And sometimes it's hiring an expert from a community perspective, and then they can sign up and join the course. And it's also by creating our own course, because the most valuable thing from the universities is they say, okay, I talk to other people who face the same problems as I do. And I learn so much from what they're doing. So that's a very cornerstone thing that we like to include, is to have the opportunity for people to meet, to talk, to share their knowledge. And we do that by hosting online sessions. We have walk-in sessions that people can use. And we have a lot of community events where I'm also available. So we support them in many ways, like as much as possible, because we believe that if you want to change something and you're left swimming, so someone throws you a recipe and says, okay, good luck with baking, then it's probably not going to work. So we want to support them every step of the way. And I see a question from Mark. Hi, Mark. Okay, did the drivers for developing this initiative originate from education establishment or by SURF identifying the need, or a bit of both? And did I encounter many academic organizations that were already doing something along these lines? And if so, were they willing to adopt your approach as well instead? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to cut those in. Those are two questions. So I'm going to cut it into, the first question is, where did this drive originate from? And as an NREN, I feel sometimes our community is very specific in what they want from us. And sometimes the drive comes from us as specialists because we spend so many times on the subject that we can see the whole perspective. And in this case, the driver is from both sides because all these different issues that the university have can be addressed with a structured approach. But they find it hard to zoom out and see that approach. So that is what we did with the working group. And the working group consisted of 5 people who convinced other people in the community that this was a great idea. So that's how we, like the olievlek, uh, I don't know the English words, oil stain approach. It's like the where you drop one drop and then it's just spread. Yes. And did I encounter many academic organizations that were already doing something along these lines? And if so, yes. The interesting thing is that the universities that have a larger team were already doing these things, and they were usually not calling it the PDCA cycle or like structured approach, but they were very much thinking about like the risk management type of thing. And so this actually makes a lot of sense for them to use. I also presented this to a group of scientists doing research on human behavior, cybersecurity and human behavior. And one of them said, the thing is, what you're saying is not new, and that's a good thing because if you had all these new things, then it wouldn't like, were we doing it wrong all the time? But what you're doing is you're putting it in a practical order. You're putting it in a practical order for a specific goal. And also said the powerful thing is that you're not just publishing something and then saying this is cool, you should use it, but you make it a long-term approach. So that is also what we're doing. It's not, I don't think after when this year is over that I'm stop using the model. This is something that we're going to use for years and years and years. Well, let's just say 3 to 5 years at least, because we noticed that for our universities, there is an increasing need to there will always be new things popping up. There will always be new things going on. And the risk that we have is that we keep reinventing the wheel. That we keep reinventing the wheel without seeing the bigger structure over it. So we're using this model also as a structure for our toolkit, for the way we support awareness and training for our community. By using it from the NREN's perspective is, okay, if you want to change things and you follow these steps, what do you need and at what step do you need support? And I think I answered the how many question as well. Yes, we have 2 people that I sort of asked who couldn't say no, and 2 universities, and then we have 2 universities who started using it by themselves. And I'm very proud because that's what we actually aim for, is that people think, oh, this is useful, I'm going to use it, and then I hear back from them, and it's very encouraging to make something and know that it's being used.
So Dan, that's really great. And I love the way that they've used universities to persuade other universities to come on board. I think it's a really clever and effective way of doing things. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a hard demographic because they usually have things in place already. So I'm very grateful for the trust that they have given us to develop something that they at first thought a bit like, okay, what is it? And then they start using it and they're enthusiastic about it. So yeah, that's cool. And I think if there are no more questions, I already saw that some people downloaded. Oh, wait, there's more.
There is another question, yeah.
What would you suggest as the first step to raise awareness in cases where an NREN has only 1 or 2 people who are enthusiastic and willing to take action? Milan, I'm going to ask you, yes, do you mean for raising awareness within your NREN or for supporting your universities on this point?
Yeah, for the start within the NREN.
Okay. Yes, within Surf, we're also using it. And we are lucky. Are we lucky? Yes, we are. Because we have an awareness officer. And what I noticed is that the awareness officer is on board, which is good. But the surprise is that in our NREN, we have other people who want to use this model. And the other people are the AI officer and the digital literacy person and the MVO, which is about we want to create a better environment. And so we need to be more mindful and about how our energy use and our carbon footprint, that kind of thing. And I didn't expect that. But it makes sense because they also want to inform and train. They also want to change behavior from people just on a different subject. So if you have an NREN with one or two people who are very enthusiastic, you can take the model and look at what you're doing now. And usually you can plot what you're already doing, and then you can see where the holes are. So, for example, we noticed that we do risk management, but we're very often jumping from general risk to we should fix it with awareness. And what we've learned from using the model is to take one step back and go, okay, wait a minute, we have this risk. And if you look at the technique and the procedures and the people kind of factor, maybe we should first try the technique approach. Like maybe we should first have a password manager before we encourage people to use one. And this makes it more effective. So you don't need to change a whole lot of things, but you can take the model, use the things that you already do, plot it on the different phases, and then you can see where the gaps are and where you can find the easy fixes. And from that point, you can continue improving.
I think that's a great example, Rosanne. And I think that's probably if I would have to start somewhere from scratch, I would definitely start with passwords and raise awareness around passwords. But as you said, it's really great if you teach people, the current NIST standard, which says you have to have at least 14 characters. Has to be a capital, has to be this and that, or you can also use passphrases. But the most important thing to prevent password reuse, because that's how the threat actors get in. And so you teach people this is the secure password, but you don't provide them with a password manager. And then what are people going to do? Well, if they want to actually comply with the policy, they would have to write them down somewhere, because on average we have 150 different passwords, right? So this is impossible. And I think this is what I really like about this cycle as well, is that you can actually say, well, my plan is, what we want to do is we want to introduce a password manager, right? And then you can use this model to do this. And obviously, whilst you're introducing the tool, the password manager, to everyone, you're also, raising awareness why this is important, because non-technical people and non-security people don't know anything about, cybercrime and how it works. That you have like a whole what's it called? Type of industry, let's call it, of cyber criminals called access brokers, who earn their money with just stealing and selling access. And I think this is probably where I would start, especially if you do it from a risk from like a risk-based approach. If we look at the Verizon Data Breach Report 2025, again, 60% right? 60% of all incidents start with either weak or stolen credentials. Now, 60%, right? And now, you know, like a question to everyone, how big is your security budget? How big is your budget for awareness? And again, what is the biggest threat? So how much could you mitigate with actually making sure people have a password manager, they know how to use it, i.e. you really support people, because password managers are not that easy if you're not technical, right? Think about it, how at the beginning we had to learn how to, I don't know, use PowerPoint or Excel or whatever, that kind of thing. So you support people with it. At the same time, you tell them why this is so important, and it's making their life a lot easier. And then we also get away from kind of the more classical approach of awareness, where we just think, you know, just telling people what to do is enough. It's not. We really, as Rosanne said, you know, we really need to look at the actual behavior and then really support people to do it different. I think, are there any more questions? No? Any more questions? Anyone? Well, if not, I think this is the point where, Olga, if you want to put in the links into our chat, because I'd like to pitch a few things to you. As I mentioned before, we're working on this awareness topic in a GÉANT awareness task force, and we have created an awareness community where, if some of you are probably already members, if you're part of this mailing list, you will receive regular updates about webinars such as this one, workshops as well. We will be doing a workshop in February. We're still not quite clear on the dates, where we'll be doing a workshop on reporting, how reporting is considered to be one of the key behaviors that we need to make sure that people can report easily and that they also feel safe to report. So there will be a workshop, like a little mini input from a researcher who's done a lot of research on this, and then a workshop on it. And then we also have the cybersecurity newsletter, which is great because it has many cases of, well, I mean, great, of other universities being hacked, and usually they serve very well, you know, to kind of get these stories to your comms people and say, hey, can you write a story why security is so important, with the example of this university that was hacked. And then usually people retain information much better with stories because they are sticky. And I think the last link is the security days that will be taking place in April next year, where we will definitely host a workshop, quite possibly on this approach that we've just heard of. And I think I can already say this, that we're definitely planning to do also an online format where we get really practical with Rosanne's or the SURF approach of how, you know, we could go about security awareness in a more structured way. And I think that's everything. Thank you everyone for participating, and I wish you all a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Cornelia. Thank you, everyone.